Оскар, красава!
4 weeks after the invasion of Ukraine commenced, it is clear that the initial Russian offensive has failed. Most of the front lines across Ukraine have become static, Russian forces have begun digging defensive trenches, and the conflict has degenerated into a temporary stalemate. While the eventual outcome of this conflict is still far from clear, the past month of all-out warfare on the European continent has provided vital clues to the far-reaching and long-lasting effects that could follow in its wake. Here are 3 bold predictions for the geopolitical consequences of the Ukraine war. Prediction number 1. Ukraine will become the next Israel after the war. This first prediction comes from Eastern European security expert Sergei Samleny. Already on March 8, 2022, when signs of the failed initial invasion were becoming evident, Samleny tweeted that following the war, Ukraine would emerge as a new Israel. He writes, "Who could say in 1944 Jews will create one of the most developed and successful states? Ukraine will be another Israel." Israel's journey from statelessness to first world status has long served as a dramatic story of national survival. Between 1945 and 1967, the State of Israel grew from its foundations as a nearly annihilated people group to become a state that wields one of the most modern nuclear-armed militaries in the world. If Ukraine manages to retain a degree of territorial sovereignty at the conclusion of the war, which appears almost certain at this point in the conflict, and if there are no stipulations of demilitarization for the Ukrainian military, the post-war Ukrainian government will look to invest heavily in procurement and the further modernization of its equipment and training. Investing in military technologies similar to Israel's Iron Dome will be a top priority. Culturally, Ukraine will capitalize on the popular mobilization of the war to create a strong societal emphasis on national security, national unity, and national service, similar to what can be observed in modern-day Israel. Ukraine may even follow in Israel's footsteps and introduce conscription for women. Economically, it is highly likely that Ukraine's post-war recovery plan will be funded by the EU and the West in the form of a modern-day Marshall Plan. It would be in the interest of the West to help fund an economically modern, stable, prosperous, and eventually self-sufficient Ukrainian state in order to deter future Russian aggression in Eastern Europe. However, unlike Israel, it is unlikely that Ukraine will pursue nuclear weapons if the Russian state remains a security threat in any capacity after the war, as this would almost certainly invite a preemptive Russian strike and a resumption of hostilities. Prediction number 2. Renewed conflict in Chechnya, Nagorno-Karabakh, and Outer Manchuria. As a means of replacing its increasingly devastating combat losses in Ukraine, the Russian military has opted to redeploy regular forces and equipment from Chechnya and the Far East, and peacekeeping forces from Nagorno-Karabakh in the Caucasus, to fight on Ukrainian territory. 75% of Russia's total conventional military strength was deployed for the initial invasion of Ukraine, and any further increases are undoubtedly leaving much of Moscow's territory undefended. A large proportion of pro-Kremlin Chechen forces have been transferred to Ukraine, and reports are already beginning to indicate that the Chechen leadership has flown their families to Dubai because of the growing unease over the Ukraine war in Chechnya. We predict that the absence of Kadyrov's forces in Chechnya has the potential to reignite the separatist rebellion that dominated the region throughout the 1990s, especially if the Russian military campaign in Ukraine continues to inflict unsustainable losses on loyalist Chechen military units. Although it is not clear exactly how many Russian peacekeepers have been redeployed to Ukraine from the Lachin corridor in Nagorno-Karabakh, the absence of Russian forces in the area could give Azerbaijan the impetus to continue and complete its conquest of Nagorno-Karabakh. As part of the 2020 ceasefire agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia that ended the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war, Russian peacekeepers were deployed to the region to guarantee the security of Armenian supply lines to Nagorno-Karabakh through the Lachin corridor. The continuation of this conflict is highly likely because Azerbaijan only achieved a limited success during the 2020 campaign and did not conquer all of its original territorial objectives. Without a Russian presence in the area, there is little to deter Azerbaijan from using its technologically superior military to attack the coveted and completely exposed Armenian city of Stepanakert. The third aspect of this prediction is by far the most unlikely, but it could indeed prove to be the most consequential if it were to transpire. In the event that regime change in the form of a popular revolution or palace coup results from the failed Russian invasion of Ukraine, it is possible that China could take advantage of Russia's internal chaos, degraded or collapsed conventional military capabilities, and the lack of military presence in the Far East to annex its coveted lands north of the Amur River. China has long lamented the loss of Outer Manchuria to the Russian Empire in the 19th century, with revanchist discourse similar to that surrounding the annexation of Taiwan. The Soviet Union and People's Republic of China have indeed already fought a small border war over Outer Manchuria during the Cold War, when at least 70 Soviet and 62 Chinese soldiers were killed in skirmishes in 1969. The Chinese annexation of Outer Manchuria is unlikely, mostly due to Russia's nuclear capabilities, which the current regime would certainly deploy if its territorial integrity was threatened. But in the days or even hours following regime change, in which the central authority of Moscow is put into question and the Russian military is paralyzed or rendered ineffective thousands of miles away from the Far East, it is very possible that little green men from the People's Liberation Army could arrive on Russian soil north of the Amur in a similar fashion to Crimea in 2014. The likelihood of such a scenario only increases if the regime change in Moscow ushers in a pro-Western or anti-Chinese leadership that aims to move the Russian Federation out of Beijing's sphere. If China witnesses the collapse and reorientation of its strongest ally, the pragmatic Sino-Russian alliance of convenience will dissolve, and Russia and China's relationship will undoubtedly revert back to its age-old adversarial configuration. Prediction number 3. Arab Spring 2.0 will emerge in the Middle East and Africa. The final prediction comes from the American economist Pippa Malmgren, a former assistant to President George W. Bush. On March 4th, Malmgren tweeted that the last time the price of wheat skyrocketed to the levels we see today, it triggered the Arab Spring in 2011. Russia and Ukraine account for around 25 to 30% of the global export of wheat, which serves as an affordable dietary staple throughout the Middle East and Africa. With Ukrainian farmers currently preoccupied with defending their land and towing away abandoned Russian military vehicles, there has been no time to prepare the soil for the 2022 harvest. Thus, the future of food security in the Middle East and Africa has been thrown into question by the Russian invasion. The uprisings of Arab Spring 2.0 could essentially occur anywhere across the region, but Egypt and especially Lebanon have been singled out by experts as the states in which high wheat prices could have the most drastic effect. The Russian invasion of Ukraine has so far been a near-complete strategic failure for the Russian military, and recent Ukrainian offensives suggest that the Russians have lost the initiative. But when dealing with Russian military history, it is important to remember German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck's famous quote, "Russia is never as strong as she looks, nor as weak." This has been Dystopia Media with 3 bold predictions for the geopolitical consequences of the Ukraine war. Please remember to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.